Shall we get started? Thanks everyone for coming. My name's Mike. I want to talk to you about something that happened to me that was very surprising last year. I read a business journal, a management journal, and I found something about technology that I agreed with. So I was so excited I wanted to tell the world, and this is kind of the short story of what's in that. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that I've seen in my consulting, and how this research is actually very relevant for us now when we're talking about Agile, and how I think basically technical excellence can help. So I'm sure we're all familiar with this website by now. It's been around for almost 17 years. So, and not a lot has changed in the last 17 years according to this website. So before we get started, I would very much like it if you could bring out your mobile phone or a tablet or a laptop or anything that you have that has a web browser in it, because I want to just do a little bit of a quiz. So at the beginning of this talk, I just want to get a sense of how you all feel about things. First question is, okay, what we need to do is go to www.menti.com, and it will ask you to enter a code. So if you enter the code 32814, you'll get access to this survey. Okay, and some of you are already in. So the idea is, like, do you think the Agile Manifesto was generally a positive thing for the software industry? It seems pretty one-sided. So you can say you agree with the statement, you can say you disagree with the statement, you can also say you prefer not to say, because sometimes we just don't know. It could be embarrassing. Okay, but that looks pretty unanimous. Generally, people think that the Agile Manifesto is a positive thing for the industry. And I have to admit, I tend to agree. I think it helped us an awful lot, especially when you consider how software was made in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s. Things have changed a lot because of it. Right. Now then, the next question. Scaled Agile frameworks are generally a positive thing for the software industry. Agree, disagree, or prefer not to say? I'm just curious. I don't want to lead the conversation in one direction or the other. I'd just like to know what you guys think, based on the things you've seen. Okay, there's a lot of people who want to stay on the fence. It's a very political hot potato, I understand that. But it's also quite unanimous, isn't it? Most of you do not think that scaled Agile frameworks are a positive thing for the industry. Do you know why? Do you have any feeling why that could be? Because they suck. Have you? How many people have seen a scaled Agile framework up close in a workplace? Okay, keep your hands up if you thought it didn't suck. Okay. Well, okay, it doesn't look like there's a lot of hands left. That's fine. I've seen scaled Agile frameworks in different companies, and generally the implementation goes fine, but the results don't come along for the ride. And that's what I want to talk about today. So thank you for playing the game. There'll be some more quizzes later, but for now, we'll leave it at that. So that's the end of the day. I want to kind of wake everyone up, make it a bit more uplifting. Final shot for the day. It's been a long day. It's been great. I hope you'll agree. For today's agenda, the first thing I want to share with you is I generally believe that modern Agile, as it's implemented, is quite rubbish. I think as practitioners, we're mostly doomed, and there's not a lot we can do about it. Except there is a way out, and you can save yourself, maybe with some DevOps, but actually in a larger sense, just technical excellence as a whole. And I hope I can prove that with data rather than opinion. Good, okay. First off, modern Agile is rubbish. 2001, some people come up with, well, basically people that had been arguing for quite some time about how to make software found that they agreed about something, and then they got together at a ski resort and decided this is what would come out of it. the Manifesto for Agile Software Development. Individuals and interactions, working software, customer collaboration, responding to change. These are good things. Let's do that. Seems reasonable, and I think it is reasonable. It's been quite successful. The idea is that now we have this manifesto, we can all work together and make software in beautiful harmony. This is what we're aiming for. So how does it work? Well, we start kind of thinking more about our software in terms of lean practices, essentially. We're going to maybe put up a Kanban board, maybe put some Post-its on the wall. It's great. It's a great thing. Now we can see what we're all working on. We can stand up and talk about our work together. You know, it's the beginnings of visibility. And once we start to make things visible, we can start to look at work in progress. And, you know, lots of good things can happen when we do this. It's great. But after a while, you think, well, we're software people. There must be a better way to do this. Maybe, you know, we have a distributed team. Maybe it's difficult for us all to be in the same place at the same time. Maybe we don't even have a wall that management will let us put our sticky notes on. So let's use a tool for this. We can build a tool, and there's plenty of good tools out there. And, you know, this helps us work together in peaceful harmony. It seems to be a step in the right direction. I think, okay, after a while, you think, this is okay. It's working. This is helping me for my team. But maybe we need to start thinking a bit bigger. Maybe we need to start thinking about things from the perspective of, you know, the wider organization. I mean, our Kanban board and our scrums can let us know what we should do in the next week or two. But how do we know we're going in the right direction? How do we know we've got a good plan? How do we bring the management on board in this thing? But it's okay. Some very, very clever people have come up with a scaled agile framework. There are many. I'm going to pick a little bit on this one, but to be honest with you, I have the same opinions of them all. This is safe. This is scaled agile framework. So we start to put a bigger box around this thing called agile, and we start to think about, you know, program increments. We start to do a bit more road mapping. We start to bring in business and, you know, maybe think about things in terms of longer terms, higher picture. That's great, but maybe we're not really thinking big enough. Maybe, okay, that will help us in our department. This will help us manage a program of work. But what about if I'm a department manager, an R&D manager? What if I'm the executive vice president of IT transformation? What I really need is a portfolio. I need some tool that allowed me to do agile across my portfolio. That's okay. SAFe has got you covered. You can do it like this. But maybe you don't have a portfolio of things. Maybe you don't have a portfolio of insurance products. What if instead you're making something really big? Maybe you're making, I don't know, the next version of Windows or something. You have a lot of people working on the same thing. That's okay too, because SAFe has got you covered. There's the large solution implementation of SAFe. That's good, great, progress. But maybe that's not enough either. Maybe you have a portfolio of large solutions. That's starting to look like something that we can actually build our business on. This is engineered agile, and this has a name. It's called full SAFe. And I have to admit, I'd feel quite safe if I was working in this environment. I mean, it's all laid out for me. I don't really even have to think very much. That kind of escalated quite quickly in a very short period of time. Software, things move fast. But you'll see that they always follow the same path. It's escalation all the way. So there we are. Are we responding to change, or are we following a plan now? It's starting to feel a bit more like following a plan to me. And I just want to point out something else. John Cutler kind of made this nice point. Where's the customer? Remember that customer collaboration? There he is. Isn't that nice? Do you notice how far the customer is from the teams? We're just doomed to repeat the same mistakes. It's like deja vu all over again. Okay, history lesson. Any of you heard of Dr. Winston Royce? He was very famous in Well, actually, in conferences like this about 10 years ago when people were trying to tell us we should be agile, and it was because of the paper that he made. And inside this paper, he talked about a method for making large software systems. And it's what we all came to know as the waterfall method of software development. The thing is, of course, in the paper, which nobody read, actually right next to this picture in the paper, it says, this implementation is risky and invites failure. Basically, don't do it like this. He's telling you right in the paper not to do it like this. The problem is that people don't read, they look at pictures. And, you know, the Defense Department had actually adopted these waterfall methods as their standard. It became a pretty standard way of making software, and it became actually mandated if you were making software for the military and in many other situations. And you think, okay, well, that's fine. Maybe that's how the military wants to do things, that's fine, but, you know, we wouldn't do that in real, like, industry, would we? But actually, when I was a student, we learned software development practices, and the one I learned was SSADM. Has anyone learned SSADM? No? Structured Systems Analysis and Design Methodology, it was called. And it was essentially waterfall. This is how I was taught to make software when I was a student. Like, you do your systems analysis, you know, requirements, systems analysis. You maybe make a logical design and a physical design and then do an implementation. In the end, you might test and hope that you got something out that somebody wants. This is what we did. At least this is what we learned, how software should be made. This is why we can't have nice things. We keep doing the same thing over and over again. And the problem is, we just generally don't want to think. We would rather someone else would just come up with the solution for how we should make software, rather than sit, look at our context, look at our problems, iterate, and do continuous improvement. You wouldn't get to a life like this if you sat and actually were looking at the way you worked and the problems you had on a daily basis in your organization. It just wouldn't happen. And in fact, I would say one further thing. If this is the software process you're following, it's because someone told you to. You didn't discover this was the right way to make software. And that's kind of the crux of the problem with SAFe as well. You're doing some software in a way that somebody has told you to, rather than figuring out that it had tools that you could solve problems with. It's basically cargo cult programming. We're just taking what we see and hoping that if we copy enough, then we'll get some of the stuff that those other organizations are getting. Because they seem to be able to make software. Maybe we should do what the best practice in the industry is. Maybe we're not that silly. Maybe we wouldn't just copy SAFe because everybody else does. But, you know, we probably might have tribes and squads and guilds because we're doing the Spotify model, because Spotify are obviously so good. And the thing is, even in this paper, they tell you, please do not copy us. This is just where we ended up. Again, we like to follow the pictures instead of reading what people actually say. It's a shame. It's the same thing, right? We're just copying in the hope that if we copy enough, we don't have to learn. We don't have to think. Copy all the things. But usually we do it quite badly as well. I haven't seen anyone copy the Spotify model and actually, you know, build in the coaches, the continuous learning, the adaption. It's quite rare. It's actually quite rubbish. Modern life is rubbish. Actually, Blur is a bit rubbish. But most importantly, modern Agile is rubbish. Okay, so now that we're all uplifted, happy about the end of the day, time to move on to We Are Doomed. Okay. Now I would kindly ask you to whip out your phones again for me. I want you to think about the two times in your career, the very best team you've worked on, and maybe the very worst team you've worked on, or the worst context, shall we say, that you've been working in. And I want you to think about, in that context, how effective was the development or the IT organization, the technology organization, how effective was it at delivering change? And I also want you to think about how aligned it was with the business in terms of how much does the business believe that they're getting what they want from the technology organization? Alignment is how much the business or how much the technology organization is aligned with what the business needs. Basically, does the technology organization listen to the business and deliver on what the business needs? Once. Let's say once. Okay, fun. You notice it's on a quadrant. It's a quadrant diagram because, I mean, why not? It's management. Okay, but this is interesting. So, I mean, I should say these dots are basically the average. So you can't read too much into them. If I put my mouse over like the worst team, you can see the distribution. It's quite a wide distribution, but they tend to center in this lower left quadrant, which is in all business text the worst place to be, of course. So the worst team is in the worst place, and surprise, surprise, the best teams are in the best place. It's very interesting. Okay. Now I'm going to get to the alignment trap, because this is essentially what the research paper I was talking about. So it was actually published in 2007, so it's quite old research, and I would very, very much love for someone to redo this research in our time, because I think it's very, very useful. What they did, I think that the authors were from Bain Consulting, and they called over 500 executives working in S&P 500 companies, basically the top listed companies in America, and asked the executives in the business side these questions. How effective do you think your IT organization is? And how aligned do they think the IT organization is with the business needs? And it was super interesting. What they found, actually, is that they would, of course, being management consultants, stick it into some kind of quadrant diagram. They would cluster these organizations based on how aligned the organization was and how effective the organization was. And what they found was 74% of the companies were in this maintenance zone, this lower left quadrant, where the IT organization wasn't very effective and it wasn't really very good at listening to the IT organization. So, the business. So they basically didn't listen and couldn't do anything. They were keeping the lights on. It was IT to keep the lights on. And that was where the majority of executives believed their technology organization was, which is kind of sad. This is also another reason why I would like this research to be redone today, because I wonder if, as an industry, we're getting better or not in this regard. So the next quadrant along is what they called well-oiled IT, where basically what the executives believed the IT organization didn't listen to them at all, but they were actually quite good. And what they found is that organizations that had this kind of profile tended to spend 15% less than the other companies on IT. They were just basically much more effective with their resources than other organizations, which kind of makes sense. But they also saw that these organizations tended to do better financially by looking at their 3-year sales figures. So they didn't listen, but they were quite good. And it turned out that from a business perspective, that was not actually a bad place to be. It was better to be effective and not listen than to listen and be ineffective. So it's cheaper and more effective than average, which is great. I mean, basically it tells us that effective and focusing on technical excellence has business benefits. Perfect. Then, of course, up in the top right-hand quadrant is this IT-enabled growth, where they say, okay, 7% of the companies were here. The IT organization was very effective, and they were very responsive to the needs of the business. They spent less than average on IT, and they ended up performing financially much, much better than all of the other, which is also what you would expect. The other nice thing about this is it kind of echoes the research that is found in the State of DevOps reports, where what they're saying is being good at technical change is actually leads to financial outcomes for a business. So it seems like that all adds up. Now, the title of the talk and the title of the paper was about the alignment trap, and this is what they talk about as the top left quadrant, where they say that if you have an IT organization or a technology organization that listens to the needs of the business, but are not very effective, it will be very expensive, and you will tend not to have very good company-wide performance. And the reason why they call it a trap is, while the IT organization is listening very intently to the needs of the business, they're probably not focusing on getting off their legacy platforms, reinvesting in better architectures, training and developing their technical squads, building platforms for the next year. So what they're saying is you can't go from the top left to the top right. You can't just suddenly start to improve your technology, because the problem is you won't, while you're focusing on what the business needs, while the business is telling you what to do essentially, you're not going to get better. And what they found was that the companies that made it to the top right, they got there by first moving down. They created projects that were outside of the realm of, or at least outside of the scope of the business drivers. So I think we see this now more and more in the organization. Like banks, they tend to create platform groups or cloud groups or other groups that are away from delivering on the new features, the new products, the new financial products, for instance. I see this quite a lot. So it looks like this. If you want to get to the top right, first you need to carve out some space where you stop listening to the business so that you can do this technical work that needs to happen. Does this ring true for anyone? Oh. I like to think of it like this. It's like a vessel or a boat. You can have a lot of engine and no rudder. You'll get somewhere eventually, but maybe you don't know exactly where. But if you have all rudder and no engine, you can try and steer as much as you like, but if you're not going anywhere, the steering is kind of pointless. You need some forward momentum. You need some technology chops to be able to go forward. And kind of summed up by this quote is that aligning a poorly performing IT organization to the right business objectives still won't get the objectives accomplished. It doesn't matter how much you listen to what the business needs if you can't deliver on those needs. Now, imagine you have a poorly performing IT organization and you think, I know, what we need is a scaled Agile framework. Do you see the problem? What we're essentially doing is building an alignment trap. So that's it, we're all doomed. How's that for a motivational speech? Okay, maybe we can save ourselves. Maybe we can save ourselves. So the next bit of research I want to talk about is the State of DevOps report, which I think has been fantastic, at least for me, because it's the first kind of large-scale research in industry, but of practitioners about what actually makes a difference. So I'm very happy that that's continuing, and I'm looking forward to the next one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what they've found. So, of course, they found that actually being good at technology led to better outcomes in a technology organization and from a financial perspective. So, and they also found that there's a big difference between high performers and low performers in industry, which, if you've been around IT for long enough, that also kind of rings true. One of the nice things that they can do with the data is that they ask very specific questions that allow them to form kind of causal relationships between constructs and their ideas. So rather than saying this correlates with this, what they're saying is, well, actually, this kind of practice, this kind of environment will predict that you're more likely to, have better IT performance. So for instance, in this diagram, you could say, if you have this compound construct called continuous delivery at a high level, it's going to be, or at any level, it will be predictive of your IT performance, and they can prove that from the data they gathered. And it's also probably predictive that your deployment pain will be negatively driven by continuous delivery, for instance. So just a quick run through of this diagram. There's a lot going on. Basically, if we were just to simplify it for the managers, what we end up with over on the right side is financial outcomes. Like, basically, they're saying they can tie lean software practices, basically Agile, and continuous delivery, basically technology skills, to financial outcomes of an organization, which is great, because then it's no longer just a fun thing. It's no longer just playing around in the sandbox. It's actually useful to get good at slicing your features and get good at automated deployments and so on. Of course, what they know is that continuous delivery requires you to adopt a lot of practices and tools, and you don't adopt practices and tools or take a lean approach to your product management without transformational leadership, basically without management buy-in. If the management doesn't buy in, then you never get the investment in these things. Which is another way of saying, if the alignment trap is here and the transformational leadership is pointing in the direction of features instead of maybe lean and practices, then you're going to build a alignment trap. This is starting to look quite far from transformational leadership, if you were to ask me. Now, the thing is, now that we know that DevOps is quite good, and we know that we require lean and so on, we might think, well, okay, but I've already invested quite a lot in this safe transformation. I mean, we've already got all these squads up and running, and yeah, the consultants were quite expensive. Maybe we just want to sprinkle some DevOps on this picture. Maybe that's the thing to do. And it's good because if you see over in the program, on the right-hand side of that image, I'll just circle that for you, there's DevOps sprinkled in here, just below the customer, strangely enough. It's almost like they were both kind of added on at the end. I don't know. Now, you can learn safe DevOps. Not scary DevOps, but safe DevOps, and it's very useful. You can even go on courses about safe DevOps, and they'll teach you nice things about build and test and continuous integration. And I mean, you should have these things, is what they'll tell you, which is nice, I suppose. And you might even wonder, how do I fit into this DevOps world? How good am I at this DevOps? Well, they've got you covered. We've got a radar, and you can just fill out this radar, and you'll know everything you need to know. Wonderful. Certification. Weird, empty certification. It's the same thing over and over again. We've been here before. Are any of you old enough to remember CMMI? Yeah, right. It's the same thing over and over again. Then, please, I would like you to answer these last few questions. I would like you to think about the company culture that you're currently in. Now, I know you're in a fantastic company culture, but I'd just like to learn a little bit about it. I often do this in a room, in a company, and that's a little more tense, I have to admit. The great thing is it's anonymous, but it's usually a very nervous time for the management. Okay, but it's starting to get there. It's very interesting, actually. We're at a conference that's actually quite expensive to attend, and you're all here after 5 o'clock still listening to people talk. So I would imagine that you're in a nice company and are quite interested in the world of software, which is great. But still, it seems like there's quite a distribution of company cultures out there. Now, the reason I ask these specific questions is that one is that they're the same questions they ask in the State of DevOps questionnaire, but the reason why these questions are asked is that they're indicative of what's called the Western culture model. Like, using these 7 questions, you can get a rough temperature of an organization's culture. So let me just explain that. So basically, if you're in the lower third of that distribution, what they would say is, according to the Western culture model, you're in a pathological or power-oriented organization where there's low cooperation, the messengers are shot, responsibilities are shirked, bridging, talking to other people, generally discouraged. When there's failure, someone's to blame, and anything that's different is crushed. Thankfully, there didn't seem to be a lot of those in the answers there, which is great. I'm glad. If you are in a culture like that, just know there are other employers available. Now, in the middle, you have the bureaucratic or rule-oriented organizations. These tend to be quite common in, for instance, the public sector and so on, where rules make things fair, in a sense. So there is some cooperation. Messengers are usually just ignored. You have narrow responsibilities. You have a job. You're a cog in the machine, and you have to do your thing. Bridging is tolerated, but it's not really encouraged. Failure leads to justice, and novelty leads to problems, because who's going to take care of this? Because we all have our narrow responsibilities. So this is one type of culture as well. And then the third type is the generative or performance-oriented culture, where there's a lot of cooperation, messengers are trained, risks are shared, bridging is encouraged, failure leads to inquiry, and novelty is actually implemented. So what they found in this State of DevOps data is that the Western organizational culture your organization has will be predictive of your financial performance, your organizational performance. But a second thing is that they found that how good you were at continuous delivery was also predictive of what kind of culture you would have. So what they say in the book Accelerate, which is kind of the long, detailed version of the State of DevOps report, they say is that investments in technology are also investments in people. And it makes sense. I know loads of companies that are, for instance, undergoing a cloud transformation. And people get really motivated. They get to learn new skills. They get to improve the daily work for their colleagues. Things start to change. There's this general feeling of good things. And then the culture starts to take that kind of almost, shall we say, agile approach to the world. You can kind of hack the culture by introducing new technology, which is very interesting. Anyone know this guy? Alistair Cockburn, thank you. He has a great website, but unfortunately it's dead. And I wanted to share with you a paper he has. It's called Characterizing People as Nonlinear First-Order Components in Software Development. It's quite catchy, right? Well, thankfully there's this thing called the Wayback Machine. We got this on archive.org, so I can show it to you. I think it was actually published in the ACM, or Communications of the ACM at some point as well, but I haven't been able to dig it up actually somewhere legit today. So you might have to dig around for it. But it's a fantastic paper. It was written before the Agile Manifesto came out, before there was even this term, Agile, I guess. So back in '99. And it's very interesting what he says. So Alistair Cockburn was basically a person who devoted his life to software process and methodology, essentially. And he would be trying out different methodologies. And what he was starting to understand is that his whole approach to testing methodologies with people was kind of broken, because people were so different. And trying to treat them as cogs for him to play methodology games on didn't seem to really work. Does this look like putting people into cogs in a machine? It kind of does to me. What he found was that problem one, people on the projects were not interested in learning the system. Like, they didn't care. He would come up with a methodology, and nobody cared. They didn't want to learn it. They wanted to do their job. This wasn't part of anything that was relevant for them. So they didn't care. And the second problem was that they were able to ignore him and his methodology and still keep delivering software. It was very frustrating. So what he learned was almost all methodologies can be made to work on some kind of project. And you have to remember that there's a lot of successful projects that were delivered and delivered a lot of value doing Waterfall, using structured systems analysis and design. We can't forget that. People delivered software in all these different kinds of systems. So any methodology can fail on some project. Agile can fail. Just because you use Agile doesn't mean your software project is going to be a success. Heavy processes can be successful. Even safe, I guess. Maybe. I don't want to say that too loud. And light processes are generally more successful, is what he found. Light processes are generally more successful. And I think that's what I found too. So what he says is in front of us all the time was the thing we weren't seeing. It wasn't the processes or the nice diagrams or the ideas. The people are actually the most important thing that determines a project success. They were the first order success driver, not a second one. Good people will deliver software in any kind of context. And it's not really that important. So actually maybe focusing rather than on a different method, maybe focusing on how to help your people might be the best way to improve. And it's not just Spotify that are coming to the realization of how to make software and make it light and not be prescriptive, but even these very traditional organizations like the Defense Department in America, they've got this Defense Innovation Board, and what they found is competence trumps process. It's the same finding from 20 years ago. They've got this great this great article, document. It's called Detecting Agile BS. And in it, they talk about this. And he says, well, okay, Agile had a bunch of values, but we're just going to have some maxims that are kind of close to it. And what they say is, rather than saying individuals and interactions over processes and tools, we're going to say competence trumps process. Let's be good. Let's not really care about how we organize our Scrum boards or how many points we deliver every week. Let's just be good. And they say, well, working software is more important over comprehensive documentation. Well, okay, that's maybe a bit more outdated. How about we just say, we want to get software into deployment as fast as we can, and that's our goal. Rather than customer collaboration and contract negotiation, just say, okay, we're going to adopt a DevSecOps culture for software systems. We're going to deliver, and we're going to deliver often, and we're going to deliver safely, and we'll get feedback based on that. And then finally, rather than responding to change over following a plan, they say software programs should start small, be iterative, build on success, or be terminated quickly. Which is actually the same things that people were saying in the 80s about, systems, large systems that work have inevitably grown from small systems that work. It's the same stuff over and over again. We keep doing learning the same lessons over and over again. They've got this useful chart in case you're wondering whether you're living in a land of Agile BS. Are your teams working, delivering working software to real users every iteration? If not, then it's Agile BS. Simple. Is there a product charter laying down the strategic goals? Do all members of the team understand how they contribute to the success of the mission? If not, it's Agile BS. Is feedback from users turned into concrete work? And are they prioritizing that work that the customers want? If not, it's Agile BS. And so on. They're very simple tests. And they don't require a big fancy, yes? Yeah. Oh, sorry. What does BS stand for? So, bullshit. Sorry? It's 6. Okay, it's after the watershed, so I can say it out loud. Agile BS is Agile Bull Dust. as my father would say. He was a very sweet man. Yes. So there's some very simple tests you can make to see whether you're actually talking about Agile, you're paying lip service to Agile, or if you actually really care about doing it this way. They've got a bonus article called The 10 Commandments of Software. I recommend also. I wanted to add that in there. And I mean, it's not just software organizations that are making these same learnings, right? Like Daniel Pink had this book 10 years ago. The thing that motivates us, and we're assuming that motivated people will deliver better work, we say, well, it's just these three things. We want autonomy, we want mastery, and we want purpose. So the first thing is we want some freedom to do our job. Don't get a lot of that in the world of a safe development environment by the looks of it. Mastery, we want to get really good. It sounds a bit more like what the DevOps research is telling us. Let's get good. And give us a purpose, give us a mission. These three things are the magic ingredients to motivation, and motivated people will deliver software. It's pretty simple. And Martin Fowler actually talked a bit about this last year in the keynote he gave, saying the agile industrial complex is that they're imposing methods on people that's an absolute travesty. And that's the first problem. And the second problem is the lack of recognition about the importance of technical excellence. Again, we're learning it over and over again. So the World Economic Forum says every modern worker will require 101 days of retraining by 2022 in order to thrive in the digital economy. That's not talking about software engineers. That's just talking about average Joe who maybe files claims in an insurance company. I see technology organizations that don't train their people. And I don't understand how that can make sense in this day and age. So think about how many days of training you can squeeze into a year, because everything compounds. So that's it. I hope this was a motivational speech for you. Safe. They were supposed to be smiley faces, but now they're torturized souls begging for death. And with that, I think I'll say thank you. Goodbye.